No, to the right. Use the right arrow to advance.
All right, so at the hi Jim, we are ready to start. At the sound of the bell. Welcome to the Design Thinking panel from Insight to Action. My name is Vera Rhoads, and I will be moderating this panel tonight. I work at IBM, and I do design thinking. So let's introduce our panelists. First, Joe, who is the service design lead at FJORD, and
I'm also the co-leader of Open IDEO DC, and we're not exactly hiring, but our chapter is all volunteer, and we love volunteers and do lots of human-centered design. So look me up if you're interested.
Okay. To my right, I have Chris Lester, who is with Chief.
Hi, I'm the Chief Creative Officer and a principal at Chief, and we are an end-to-end agency doing work in both private sector and in government. Brand all the way through to technology development.
Okay, and across the table, I have my good friend and colleague, Steve Mealy.
Yes. How are you doing? Stephen Mealy, Creative Director for Public Sector. We deal with healthcare, federal government, education, the military branches, and also the intelligence community.
Okay. Great. So if you thought that you'll be here just to listen to us, we have a little surprise. No. It will not be a design thinking session without some sticky notes. Can you make sure you find them on your chairs? So everyone should have sticky notes and something to write with. Okay. So let's get this fun started. Okay, everyone has sticky notes? Okay. So the first task for tonight is, this is actually all of us. If you want to get in touch with us, we really would love to hear from every single one of you because we love what we do and we like to continue the conversation. So you have your sticky notes and you have your pen, pencils, markers. So first task for tonight, please take about a minute and draw a vase. And yes, it's a competition, so we want to see beautiful vases or vases. Okay. And I'll ring the bell when we're done with the drawing. Oh, and those of you watching this at home, please take a sticky note and a pen, and please draw a vase. Actually, you can post some of your drawings on Facebook or on the Meetup so that we know that you're actually participating. Okay, so everyone should have a vase. Okay, we're done. Why don't we have a volunteer to come show us what you've drawn? Yeah, please join us. And for the camera to see you, we'll go over here. So, wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Well, by coincidence, yesterday my husband gave me a Christmas gift of a
little bit closer to the mic.
A vase that he had commissioned a potter to make, custom make. And it has designs based on Van Gogh, who is my favorite artist. So I thought it was a really nice Christmas gift.
Oh, that's a beyond wonderful. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. So custom designed Van Gogh vase. Okay, we can't top that. Okay. Thank you so much for volunteering. So
but someone will top it. Let's see.
Let's go actually to the next exercise because we have a lot of discussions going on. So take another sticky note and let's draw a way to enjoy flowers. So first we were drawing a vase, and yeah, I'm sending a memo to my own husband who's watching right now. See what husbands do? Okay.
But she wants her vase on a necklace.
Okay, a minute to draw an experience, a way to enjoy flowers. that part over there, you guys need sticky notes or something? Oh, you're done? Okay.
They're observing.
Okay, they're fast.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ring the bell again. So let's see. Do we have a volunteer? Let's have you over there. Let's come over here.
So fun fact is that I actually took floral design in college.
Oh,
Oh my.
But the basic concept actually is that I'm not an artist, I'm not the artist in my family. But the basic concept that they always told us is that if you want to enjoy the flowers, you have to pick a base. So there's actually 2 different designs. And the idea is that you actually want the simplest design, the simplest shape you can do with just a little bit of an extension towards the top. So that way the flowers can actually rest into whatever the final position is. So you have short flowers, you want kind of a shorter base, but long flowers. The concept is always still the same, is that you have a very sort of simple shape that kind of tapers down a little bit so that the stem stays secure, but just a little bit of an opening so that the flowers can rest.
wonderful. Thank you. Okay, let's have another vote. Thank you so much. Let's have very functional. Let's have another volunteer. How about Heather? Let's see what she drew. Oh,
Oh
wow.
my. We have another Van Gogh.
I put a vase of flowers on the piano because I like to play, and I like to experience beauty and with the actual music. So
Okay, so we have a grand piano, a musician, and a UX person who is enjoying flowers. So who wants to tell me what the difference is between the first drawing and the second type of drawings? How about John, our cognitive scientist over there?
I would say
One is a base, one is an experience.
No wrong answer.
Yeah, there's no wrong answer.
Absolutely. So one is an object or a product. The other one is an experience, how we enjoy flowers, how we connect with others. I'm sure some of you drew maybe a walk in the park. Heather is enjoying the piano and many different options. So we're here to talk about the experience and how to make this experience really, really useful. So some of you might be new to design thinking, so we'll show you a very, very brief intro to design thinking. What you see on the board is the Stanford model of the 5 phases of how you actually create, and we are posting the slides so you can see all of that. And what is essential, what is important about this, there is focus on the user. Focus on the user needs and empathizing with those needs, truly understanding what people want to experience, and then giving them opportunity, creating a product to satisfy all of this. So this is more of the traditional design thinking that was made very popular by Stanford University. What you probably see here is that it's very one-directional. It's going from emphasize and all the other phases to prototype and test. So what we at IBM, where Steve and I work, we took this and we made it a little bit more multi-directional, or we have this notion of the loop, because this experience does not stop. It's not a one-way, I empathize with you and then I deliver a product. It's really a constant, continuous loop of observing, reflecting on this observation. So I can observe a lot of factors about you here tonight, and then based on this observation, we make certain reflections on this, and then a product is designed. It's a very continuous loop. We also have certain principles and keys behind that. And because we want to get to the panel for more information, I strongly encourage everyone to go to ibm.com, and we have a lot of information on design thinking, and then we can take more questions about this.
I think one thing also about this loop is that it's not from the designer's perspective necessarily. It's including the client as well. So it's an agile form that can go either way. It can swim this way, it can swim that way.
Absolutely. And it's all focused on the users. It's approaching the users and figuring their needs. And that's a cornerstone. And if you're solving the wrong problems, or if you're not examining the correct users, you really cannot reach the right solution. And that's why design thinking is so powerful in solving difficult problems. And we go through a very detailed process and methodology. We wanted to show you one of the artifacts of this process. Steve? Nope. Okay. No, we're good. We have the journey map thing.
That side that comes after.
Okay. All right. So let's start with our esteemed panel. And the first question I want to ask people is, why design thinking and why now at the end of 2016? And why don't I start with Joe on this one?
I think the best way to look at that is that we are a nation and a world facing a lot of complex problems. Everything is changing faster with technology and society than perhaps we as human beings are quite ready for. So it's no longer enough to get your expertise in one area, like those of us who've been in academia a long time. Look around and, you know, we still don't know anything about all of the other many things that are going on in the world. So instead of just being very focused, we have to go much broader. And to do that, we have to collaborate with the people that we're solving problems for. So the world, I think, is ready for design thinking. The work that I'll be talking about tonight is the work that I do with the DC chapter of OpenIDEO. And we use design thinking to solve problems in the community. Our current challenge is around reducing mass incarceration in the district by 50% by 2021. And so we're part of Mayor Muriel Bowser's initiative to do this. And by working in the community and collaborating with returning citizens and nonprofits in the DC government and folks in the federal government and bringing all these different kinds of people together, we're able to come up with ideas that we can then test in the community. And all along the way, we're talking to the community members and the returning citizens and their families and folks that are involved. So to make sure that their voices are heard and to make sure that we're designing something that somebody wants, because yeah, underserved communities have a lot of crap designed for them that nobody wants. And so we don't want to be part of that. And I just think the time is now.
Such a great answer. How about Chris? What would you like to add to this?
So I'd say it's really like, it's the kids, it's all of you. It's the fact you look at Uber, and Uber's worth is 7 years in, it's worth more than GM. It's worth more than Ford. It's worth more than Honda. And it was just a couple of people using creativity to figure out how to solve a really complex problem. But they were able to recognize the problem and then also bring intense creativity to figure out how to solve it. Same thing with Airbnb. And for me, I know anyone in here who went to art school here. All right, good. Because when I went to art school in the 80s, and when I went to art school because of absolutely pure passion. There was nothing for us to do except try to be art directors, which everyone was grabbing those jobs. So coming out of art school, there was nothing. And that it was really just a labor of, it's sort of seen as a labor of love forever. Airbnb comes along, art school kids. Airbnb is worth more than many hotel chains. And so right now we are at a time where companies are starting to recognize we better get creative because everything else is a commodity, and it is moving so fast that this, you know, anyone who is doing anything that is redundant, a commodity, anything else is going to be replaced by a process, by a machine. It's like creativity that is left standing.
That's very inspirational. Steve, how about you?
So I agree with Joe and Chris about the technology part. It's just moving so fast that the companies are trying to adjust and pivot to try to figure out what's the best solution for them. So the design thinking does help when they know who their users are, that they can kind of curtail what they're doing and focus directly on what the customers want, and they can streamline so they're a little bit more effective that way. And I think the other part that we need to consider, and I think we might have a slide on this one, is economy. Because of the technologies, these companies can't just sort of throw a dart and say, okay, we gotta go after that technology. They have to really focus, and an important part of design thinking is the journey map. So the journey map will show a solution that we will come up with to say, here's the technologies that we feel are important for you. So for the short term and long term, you're going to be solid, you're going to be competitive, you're going to be relevant. So I think that's what makes design thinking so important today.
Wonderful. And everyone in the audience, please start thinking about your own questions. I have a bunch more questions for the panel, but we'll make sure that we answer your questions as well. So the second question,
So
this was, go ahead.
So this shows you, this is a quick example of what a journey map might be. I'm not going to go through all of the elements, but what we use it for is to show a client, here's where you are today, and here's where we believe you need to be tomorrow, 3 years, 5 years down the road. And because these problems are so complex, just talking about them, it's hard to resonate with the clients and for them to say, yeah, that's great. So what we use is a artifact, which is called a journey map, that shows who the personas will be and how this solutions will affect their lives, make them better. And it really, for the decision makers, it makes it a lot easier to say, oh, I get it. You know, you get it. For them to say, all right, let's move forward. So this is a great tool to use.
Absolutely. And building upon this, let's talk about some strategic initiatives that are bringing real value. So why don't we kind of talk about a little bit? And I have here, I have Chris.
All right. So, you know, we've been using design thinking in a lot of different capacities, and some of it is using the philosophy of design thinking, and others are really using some of the, whether it's IBM or Stanford or IDEA, using some of those, some of the processes, but we're really sort of, you know, using an amalgam and then also making some of it up. But it's all about solving, really, it's really thinking about framing the challenge in ways that are not tied to those very specific deliverables. In this case, so we're working with like Chan, so we're consulting with the Chan Zuckerberg initiative, and we've been doing this for over a year, since before the launch. And in this case, the challenges are always new challenges. It's curing all disease in our children's lifetime. It's advancing human potential and promoting equality. And so working with the teams at Facebook, cross-functional teams with other agencies who are also supporting the initiative, and always, you know, we're never thinking about it in the sense of there's never a deliverable. It's always, we have a problem, we have something very complex to solve, and that we work together through using many of these processes that you can find at Stanford or find at IDEA or find at IBM, but using these processes to work through how we can start creating some real value and new ways to think about solving those problems. So we're never contracted. We're never contracted for a thing. We're contracted for a solution. And that solution involves many stakeholders. And I'll say one more really quickly. We're working with the Inter-American Development Bank right now, and they've hired us to do what they call pitch books. But really the challenge that we're working to solve there is making gender motivating, relevant, and empowered throughout the institution, and then also across Latin America and the Caribbean. And so we bring our clients into those conversations from that perspective, and then use many of the, you know, we're looking at from their customers, their clients, the audience's perspective, and using those tools to help us get through solutions.
Absolutely. Joe, I know you're doing some very interesting work with OpenIDEO. Do you want to add something to what Chris was talking about, those great initiatives?
I think that anytime you can talk to the community and have people tell you what they want and need when those are problems that they can't solve, or that you have government folks or other people who support the community saying, we're having a really hard time with this. It's an ongoing, persistent problem, and it's ruining people's lives. It's ruining families' lives. And when people come to you and say that stuff and actually give you a chance to work with them to make a difference. I think it's an incredibly empowering thing from a personal perspective, but also it's a great way of giving back to the community. So for us, we do different types of challenges and we do different types of work, but we're always social justice driven. And I think that is a really important way to make a difference. And we need more of that.
Absolutely. Steve?
I'm kind of going right with you. I'm working with the United Nations on a refugee migration solution. And it's kind of like what you said. Some of these problems have never been solved before. So that's why they come to us to come up with ideas that haven't been thought of. We don't really use the word like think out of the box. We kick the box out and we use a 360-degree thought process where there's no bad ideas. And what draws me to this project is that when I was researching it, all I kept seeing was these numbers. And I was getting a little bit kind of like nervous that, you know, can I help solve this problem with the team? And then, so I called the client back up and said, I got to have one more meet with you. And she said, you know, this is about families. This is about nurses. This is about doctors. This is about people. And at that point, I had sort of an aha moment where it was like, I was thinking about the numbers and stuff, and it was freaking me out. And design thinking is all about the users. And I got back to my design thinking core. And that's when I came up with solutions with Vera and the team for refugee migrations, where it is about the people. And what draws me to it is helping these communities in life go from where they are to where they're going to be in the future. And if you're part of that, then it's a good feeling in the heart.
So everyone is talking about those very noble projects, great projects. So how do you actually involve your users, your community, your citizens, or even your clients in your teams? Joe, why don't you try this one?
From the very beginning. So when framing the challenge, talking to all different kinds of stakeholders. So from my perspective as a service designer, but also in terms of the work that I do with Open IDEO, we tend to talk about stakeholders. We don't talk about users because to me, users is a more product-based language. And a lot of people don't feel like they're, you know, users of services. They feel like they should, I don't know exactly, but they feel like they're the citizenry. They feel like they are part of the community and they like that kind of language better. So I tend to go with stakeholders because it works for more people. And we involve them in framing the challenge, in the research phases, in co-creating solutions, and then testing those solutions because, yeah, every time you create something, it's going to be really wrong, and that's great. It's a learning moment, and you have to go out and test it with the folks that need it, and then you'll learn new things. So I think design thinking reminds me always that it's a good thing to get things wrong because it's a chance to learn better. I wish I could remember the quote exactly, but
it's fail fast.
Nope, that's not it.
Sooner.
That's a good one, but that's not it. No, it's about you design to be right and you test to be wrong. I think that's it. And I like that. I think that's a really good way to go.
Cool. Chris, you want to add something?
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, it really is, it's a participatory thing. And I think that looking at it from an internally from the agency perspective, what we've done, what we've found is that in the work that we're doing, really cross-disciplinary. So, you know, we are redesigning parts of our space to be very flexible. You know, where we're starting to do hoteling, so groups can come together to work through these complex problems instead of having the very sort of siloed, which has really been sort of historically typical. But finding ways to be much more flexible. And then with our clients, we are really pushing hard to be agile, to be much more collaborative with our clients. But we still have many clients who are really pushing back hard. So we're bringing it internally and doing as much as we can, both with those, you know, with those stakeholders, audiences who are going to have the real insight that we need, but then really looking to sort of shape our culture internally to make that something that becomes really natural, that we have groups, teams who are just taking over certain parts of our office, depending on what they're working on. They're working together really closely so that we're not getting into, I just finished my piece, I'm handing it to someone else. And being much, you know, much leaner in our approach there. And then as absolutely participatory with our clients, with their stakeholders as we can be.
Absolutely. And actually, this reminded me something. My favorite part of the process is when you start a design thinking workshop, and in the beginning, you might have some skeptics who don't really believe in the process. And by the end of the session, they become true believers. And that's probably the most favorite part of all of this.
Yeah.
But let's see what Steve wants to add to this one.
So Vera and I are with a group, Imagine a World, and it's kind of blue sky thinking. Clients will come in, and these are internal folks that say, we have these external clients that may have some pain points, that may have some problems. And we try to bring together a variety of different skill sets to the team. So we have user research, strategy and design. We'll have content folks. We'll have a PM. So everyone on our team can come at it at different angles and think of it different ways. So it's just not one person coming up with a solution. It's a collaborative effort. So there's a lot of back and forth with the clients about their pain points, and we just listen to them. It's important that when you're in front of these clients, internal or external, that you kind of zipper up a little bit and just use your ears and let them talk, because you're not going to get in front of them very often. So that's the chance for you to really absorb what they're saying. And Vera might hear some things that I did not hear. Our content specialist, she's taking notes of everything that everyone's talking about. Vera may be looking at these folks and just seeing tendencies where they may be getting up or if they're getting bored. So we sort of switch gears a little bit to make sure that everyone's engaged. But just imagine a world, the idea is to come back where we know the personas, and the personas, we could start off with 40, we could start with 50, and then we whittle it down to say, we got to get it right. So it ends up with 2 or 3 that are spot on. And then we work from there on the story to tell the client, here's where you are today, here's our solution, here's where you need to be tomorrow, do the journey map, and then we progress from there.
Okay, so now we're coming to my absolutely favorite question of the night. So I'm looking around the room, and some of you.
Why don't we ask who does?
Yeah, we'll do that. So I'm looking around the room, and some of you have known for 20 years, so I don't want to disclose ages here, but we've been doing this for a long, long, long time. And right now we have this alphabet soup of things. So by show of hands, how many of you believe you do UX? Okay, pretty much the whole room. How many of you do CX? Okay, so it looks like maybe a quarter of the room. Anyone doing BX? Okay, I have some brave people here.
Yay.
And maybe about 5 or 6 people who do BX. And actually all of us do other things as well. I mean, it's like a whole alphabet soup of the special skills that we bring to the table. So I want to ask my panelists, what do you make of all of this? It seems that at any given moment, something becomes more relevant, and then all of a sudden we're all changing our titles, and then something else becomes. So why don't I start with, let me see, Joe on this one.
I think that it's really all about experience. If we're going to boil it down, we can talk about experience for different stakeholders or different values that we want to bring to the organization. But it really is coming down to those things we have as humans, those experiences of the world around us. And I think that means relationships are at the center of experience. That means that emotion matters just as much as reason. And in fact, one can't exist without the other. So let's just pay attention to that and pay attention to how people feel about whatever it is, the product, the services, the experience that you are designing. And, you know, I think it's okay to have a lot of different names because it's really hard to get so many different types of people to agree on anything. So I don't feel the need for everybody to converge, but I think it's always good to know how you define it for yourself and be ready to share that with people so they know what on earth it is you think you do.
Okay, how about the other panelists? Chris?
Sure. So for us, absolutely, it's all experience. Everything is experience. And as you know, and like we were saying at the beginning, is that everything that's not experience is becoming a commodity. Products are valued less than experiences. And certainly like within my company, I have this conversation all the time that every single thing is an experience. Nothing is just a transaction. Every email we send, even if it is an email that's just, we're just sending someone information or letting them know what we're going to do, is that those are opportunities to create experiences. And we have to understand how we're creating those experiences. And certainly we had one, one example recently. It was a little, sort of a test, but there was a group within our company who really want to take on more leadership. And so we gave them a one of our events, internal events, which was kind of like a town hall type thing. We said, hey, we'll do this town hall. You guys can lead it, talk about stuff. And because they were saying we want to be innovators, we want to be leading on brand, we want to be doing all these things and having more, a greater responsibility on these fronts. We're like, okay, well, why don't you take this? And it was, it was partially a test to sort of discuss that every single part, the first email that was sent out about it needed to be innovative. It needed to promote our brand. It needed to have all these qualities that these people were looking, that these teams were looking to bring. And that it's not something, well, we're going to bring it out at another time. It's like right now with every single thing you do. I've also in our company tell everyone to put in our conference rooms, push the seats in, make them neat, make sure everything is really sharp. I don't care if there's writing all over the walls, there's stuff everywhere. Like there are certain things that are signals to our excellence that are part of the experience, that when clients walk in, they get the sense of that integrity, and that is part of how we're successful as a company. So we look at, there's not one single thing that is just standard or typical, or no, it's just, that's not connected to the experience we're creating.
So that's interesting. So internally, you're creating a culture and experience that everyone's bonding and everyone's buying into. And in doing so, then when you go out to your clients, they're going to feel the same thing because your heart and soul is into it. It's not just a facade. So that's fantastic.
Absolutely. So how do you extend it across the enterprise and to the broader community?
So, so with us, I mean, one of the things that we do, and I think it's like what AddThis is doing as well. I mean, we do a lot of sort of community events. We have a dedicated event space in our office. How many people have been to events in our office? A few people have, yeah. Like last week we did a big event for government in VR, AI, AR, where we also had partner companies. We had Booz, we had Deloitte, we had a bunch of people in who were showing what they were doing there. And we're really looking at being part of that community in a lot of different dimensions to help us be connected to what's happening. And then really looking outside of ourselves in our work too. Where can we connect with, with whether it's stakeholders or others who may not be directly in line with what we're doing or directly connected to our clients, but are going to give us dimensions of understanding that will help us think about things differently. And, that's really sort of fundamental to our culture.
Absolutely.
So we also do some interesting things to connect the UX community together. So we've been running these connect and collaborate events, and they're day-long Saturday sessions where people come in and we do design thinking. We use design thinking to work on community issues. So some of the things that we've done is help out GoodGov UX a little bit with their badging initiative, which is a way for the community to, you work on a project for something like this Meetup group, and you can show your excellence. You can be confirmed by your peers, and that's a way that you can get some recognition. So that was really great. We worked on the UXDC conference. We worked on envisioning the future of all these different groups. So we're using design thinking all the time to try to make our own community better as well. And I think that's been really generative in connecting a lot of different people who otherwise might be a bit more siloed. So yay to UXPADC for kicking that off with us.
Yeah. It's interesting. So Vera and I go out to a lot of different groups. NoVA UX, this is fantastic that we can come here. We really appreciate it. To spread the word about what we're doing. We also do masterclass on Saturdays, where it's a full day of design thinking, where most of the folks don't know anything about it, so starting from scratch, but it's a lot of fun. And then we are also starting off, and this was Vera's idea of kicking off with the DC education. And maybe you can tell a little bit about that, your idea, where we're going out and we're spreading design thinking to the schools.
Oh yeah, actually, what we want to do is we want to use design thinking as going into primary schools and high schools and really underprivileged schools. So I'm working with several high school teachers and educators, and we want to bring that kind of a skill, the ability to empathize with people and creative thinking, and to really help students actually change better. And I'm also on the board of a nonprofit organization called Bite Back. It's BY, not bite like, you know. So it's BYTE, and it's a wonderful organization in DC, Washington, DC. It uses the power of technology to really change people's lives. And there's nothing like when you see you teaching somebody something and then they make a complete turnaround of their experience. So it's totally rewarding. And by the way, I love all your events, you know, the chief events, our own events, and going to all the stuff that OpenIDEO puts together. Okay, so what's today? Today is December. So we're going into 2017. So what are our bold predictions for the future? If you can have a magic ball or however you predict the future, what would change? What would you say would change for the users? What do you think 2017 would bring?
So I mean, it's clear the machines are coming. So
the drones or just the machines?
And this is this is positive, and this is whatever it is. You know, it's but this is a conversation that has been been happening around our office, where if anyone's talking about doing work that is not really blowing our clients away or doing something that is totally creative, that those jobs are going to be replaced. And like every day you see something new. Like I just saw something the other day where there's this it's a robot that like just does that just will plant, feed, create a garden that can completely sustain you in your home, and without you ever having to touch it. And so like anything that is repetitive, mundane is going to be replaced. And I think that this is where like creativity is the like one piece that is going to be a critical part of anyone who is going to like really be able to take advantage of what's happening in the future.
Absolutely. So would we be doing empathy maps for machines?
The machines might be doing empathy maps. We're gonna have to stay a step ahead.
Cool. Joe and Steve. Joe?
Well, empathy, yes, I was going there, not the empathy mapping machines. But so I think that the big thing that is going to change is we're going to stop using this language of users so much, and we're going to start empathizing with ourselves as technology professionals and professionals in various fields who have to figure out how to solve problems for people on the fly with very little resources and do it well. And I think that having a little empathy for ourselves is going to help us be better in the design work we do. And if I was remembering properly, I would remember those two Stanford professors who wrote this book about how to design your life. And they use design thinking and they apply it to their life. And I do this in my classroom with my students, and it is fantastic. And I think that it's going to catch on a personal level beyond just a corporate level or a community level. And I'm really excited to see how people are going to change their lives using the tool of design thinking or the framework. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I'm tag teaming with you a little bit. I agree with you, of course, on the creativity. I think in the future or in the tomorrow, designers, UX designers are going to have the opportunity to get into the boardrooms, to get into meetings where creativity is really going to fuel the conversation. And I talked about, we think about, 360-degree view of creativity and thinking. So I want to tell you a little story about a undergrad student who had and you can click the next one more, who had an opportunity to do a poster for the school where someone was coming in, this gentleman, in fact.
Guesses who that is?
Anybody know who that is? Graham Chapman, exactly.
Okay, you get the sticky note, Pat.
So Graham Chapman, for those of you who may not know, was with Monty Python for quite a while, late 60s through the mid 80s. And this student had an opportunity to design a poster. And they gave us, the PR person gave us this picture. And the designer was like, you know what? This doesn't have anything to do with Monty Python. It doesn't show the users, the people that are going to be going to this conference, what they're all about. It needs to show his personality. So the designer came up with something that was a little bit more creative. So I want everybody to start a little chant so we can see what the end product was. So everybody say, poster, 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 poster,
Come on,
poster, 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 poster. Hey!
On the camera, on the camera.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, thank you, Santa.
Okay, did you? Thank you.
Oh,
Oh, oh, oh.
tis the spirit. So what happened was, instead of coming up with an 8.5 by 11 with a photograph and date, time, place, the designer came up with something that was a little bit more suitable to what Monty Python's all about. So we have Graham Chapman on the ostrich, laying an egg in a dress. So this was what happened. Graham Chapman actually saw it, and he wrote, "Thank you for a neat poster." Ah, that's like a lot of clients, man. You work so hard, you do all this stuff, and you're thinking, "Whoa, they're really gonna pat me on the back." So, hey, that was great. Appreciate it. Can you guess who the designer was? Correct. So, but I just want to show you that the clients might come in with a idea of here's what we want, but that's not what our specialty is, and that's not what we come to the table for. You know, we're there to show creativity, as Chris mentioned and Joe mentioned, and that's our job, and that's our duty, and that's our role, and that's what we all love to do as UX designers. So spread the love, be creative, and that's why design thinking is so popular today, and it will be in the future. So.
Absolutely. Any closing? This was a great story. This was beyond. So any last minute call to action? Everyone get up and conquer the world.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
You can start, kick it off.
All right. So I would like you all to spend at least 5 minutes this week thinking about yourself as a practitioner and asking yourself some really important practitioner questions, like what the hell am I doing with myself? What is it that I'm doing to serve my clients and my stakeholders? And am I being inclusive? Am I actually listening to the voices that aren't the loudest ones in the room? And I'll let you figure out what to do with those answers. But I really hope that you spend 5 minutes thinking about it, because I think that's the kind of thing that makes us all better at what we do.
Yeah, I think echoing off of that, and I think it's really like, both, our mantra is be brave, and that, I think you really ought to think about doing what you ought to do and not what you're supposed to do. And I think there's still a lot of people, a lot of companies who are really thinking about things and how they're supposed to do it, but really they're finding like the real solutions and connecting with real people is by focusing on what you ought to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I have to add to this one, teach somebody something. So consider yourself not only a practitioner, but consider yourself an educator at heart, that you can teach people something. So let's take some questions from the audience. So who has questions? Yeah. You need to speak up so we can, yeah.
And actually, if you can repeat the question that they asked,
Okay.
then you'll pick it up.
Okay.
I hope it will not be a problem because I can use my microphone. Okay.
So I want to talk about this employee experience part. Most of the projects that we are working on, what happens is employees are insecure. I'm trying to connect multiple things here. What I'm trying to say is, as machines come in, the employees are kind of getting insecure. If you guys would have seen the Amazon Goes advertisement, which is happening for the last couple of days, I see a lot of comments being said that the middle class would lose their jobs and those stuff. But then, how can we really enhance the employee experience? Like he was just saying, remove those mundane and repetitive jobs with the technology.
Okay, who wants to take this one? The question is about the power of design thinking to improve the employee experience, especially in a changing and evolving world.
I mean, I'll start with this one. So it's a machine. So anything that's AI or IoT, it's just a box until a human tells it what to do. So the human's always going to be there. The box is there to enhance the opportunity. So the human needs to be there to teach the box, artificial intelligence or cognitive, what to do. But once that box has all the answers and all the solutions and whatnot, it doesn't go anywhere. It needs the human to take that information and then use it and enhance it with the client. So the human's always going to be part of the equation.
I'll add one thing to that. I mean, I think that everyone is inherently creative, and I think that it's going to require companies to reshape culture around valuing that creativity and giving the opportunity for it. One of the things that like I was trying to really simplify this in my company, and I said to everyone in the company, I said, your job is either to be creative, to find more time to be creative, because people do so many things that don't actually result in like a creative outcome for a client. And creative cuts across the entire company. You can be in technology, you can be in account services, you can be in anything. And that if you're not directly doing that brilliant work that is creative, that moves our clients forward, then your only job is to make more time for others to be able to be creative. And so I think there's that's a big question. A lot of people who are really insecure, but the thing is, what you have to do is find the space for them to be creative. I think there's a lot of opportunity within the framework of design thinking to bring that in and bring people, maybe some of your newer, younger staff into the process where you're side by side, where you're not siloed, you're not tiered, you're really side by side with everyone. And you'll find that there may be some who can't get there, but most of your people will find a way to bring real value outside of the things that are just truly commodities.
Okay, let's take another question. Go ahead.
I have a question for Steve. Steve, you mentioned about working with the UN on refugee issues, which I think is fascinating. It's so important. But were you able to actually connect with actual refugees, or did you just talk to staff who work with refugees? I was just curious.
We talked to the staff who talked to the refugees. So we're getting the information from potential refugees. So we're talking to the staff, and the staff is on site in camps that have X amount of folks there. So they're getting input from them, and then they bring it back to us. So our solution is not just fairy tale dust. It's accurate, and it's appropriate actions that we're taking.
Question in the back.
So this question from the panel, actually, and actually for the audience. Do customers come to you for design thinking? And if not, how do you go about instilling that? I'm guessing that's a process, right? Do they come to you for end solutions? Say, I need to figure out something. Or do they come to say, hey, come help me out with design thinking?
Okay, that's a great question.
If you don't do that, how do you sell it? Right? How do you go about doing that?
Okay, so let's ask the audience first, and then I'll ask the panel. So how many of your customers come to you and say, hey, I want a solution or a product, and then you use design thinking for that? Okay. Okay, so people come for solutions. How many of your clients come to you and say, I want design thinking because it's in the Harvard Business Review, show the Harvard Business Review, because it's in every, so I mean, it's in every cover of every magazine, it's everywhere. So how many of your clients come and say, hey, I want design thinking? Interesting, less than that. Okay, so more people are coming to the audience for solutions rather than the process or methodology. How about the panel?
Sure. Go ahead.
It's kind of a toss-up. It's a lot of both. So yes, it solves problems, and then it's a framework or a methodology for doing so. But because I do a lot of education work, it's flat out help my people understand design thinking, teach us how to do these things, and help us spread this throughout our company so that we can change our culture and we can all have that shared experience, because it's not enough to talk about design thinking. You really have to do it to get the highs and the lows and the good and the bad and the excellent end results. So yeah, it's both for me.
I'd say for typically for us, it's someone comes to us trying to, I mean, often they'll come to us saying, we need a thing, and that they're really trying to solve a problem. But we had Fannie Mae come to us with a challenge where they did say, we want to bring our executives in and we want to go through a design thinking process, because they have been reading Harvard Business Review and they've been seeing it everywhere else. So that's actually the only one for us, but typically we're using pieces and parts and, you know, and our own approach to it. But it's solving, and it's always really about, I mean, it's never about design thinking as just like, let's just do some design thinking. It's always, there's always the challenge that we're trying to confront.
So I think at IBM, interactive experience is a little bit different, where the CEO of IBM saw the benefits of design thinking, and so it's permeated throughout the whole company. So every group, every division uses design thinking. And those folks will come to us when they have a client that has a problem for us to figure out a solution to. And what we're finding is that, as Vera mentioned, some are coming as skeptics, which is fine. We walk through the process, and after we talk logically about what the solution is and how we're going to come about it, we convert, and they believe in it. And when they show it to the clients, they see positive results. What happens then, the folks around the office say, whoa, Mary, her thing worked out fantastic. I got to try it. So then they come in with a little bit bigger smile and say, hey, I want this design thinking session. And it just trickles, and it works. It constantly works. So that's how it works at IBM.
Absolutely. And Jim, you're doing a marvelous job streaming this through the power of streaming and through the power of technology. I wanted to go back to the question that was asked about the refugee. And we wanted to clarify that the person at IBM who leads the refugee initiative, Rana Novak, actually have family, actual real refugees. So when we ask, do we work with actual refugees? The answer is yes. And we use design thinking as an enabler to solve problems. Okay, let's take, what, 2 more questions? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question in terms of how do you keep people on track in terms of following through the whole design process?
A bell. Actually, I took some of it from Joe. A bell, a gong. Oh, keep going.
I grew up here, I kind of knew that in my heart that DC is still in the area generally, still very behind the tech. And so one of the biggest challenges I face, especially with the clients I previously used to deal with, is that it didn't kind of matter in terms of your UX or development person or anything else in the whole development cycle. It always comes down to numbers. And it's one of the biggest challenges I face, where when clients want to see how your progress is, they love to see numbers and metrics, and not so much as a context, or in your case, where you explain the journey, how far you've come in the journey, what are the struggles that you've have gone through and what's the progress you're making. So how do you try to keep the message when you're trying to say, like, you know, this is how far you are, to get away from the horrible metrics game? That's what I like to call it. The whole sort of metrics sort of hole is that you can get lost in those abyss where you might spend a lot of your time making numbers that don't really matter in the long run. But to show that, so do you have any suggestions in terms of like how do you try to keep the message focused on what you've been suggesting, which is the progress, the process, how far you want to use your journey, not so much on the metrics that sometimes slip their way into it.
Let me take a little bit this one. And first of all, maybe a lot of people in the audience might disagree with you that DC is behind. Actually, let's see the audience. Do we think we're behind? What are we behind? What, California or? Okay, so maybe we shouldn't open this one. Yeah, this is the home team.
The home team sucks. You can't ask that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, we have a full house here, and this is the people here who are making the change in DC. So I wanted to say that we have a great community, and this community will change all of this. Now, I want to take it back to IBM for a second. We made design thinking a core skill for all of our consultants. So we actually requiring all of our consultants to get certified in design thinking as a practitioner. And then we educated the account leads. So it was a huge education effort, and they have to understand the approach. The people who go out there and sell, the industry leads, the account leads, the people who interact with the customers. So it's a change in culture. To go to your point, we are reinventing the culture, and we are making it all about the experience. And
so, I mean, one thing is, just to clarify your question, is your question that you have clients who are skeptical of the process and want some validation along the way? Like, look, they're looking for, like, okay, we've come this far, we want to make sure.
I think a lot of it has to do with that sort of insecurity that in the dealings with I had my clients, I realized that the problem is that they just don't have that education, they don't have that experience. And so for them, the safety net is metrics. Like, if I can tell them that we've created, and anyone who's worked in Agile process knows that, you know, your user stories and counting user stories doesn't really help you. So a lot of the times they're like, well, we have initially in our backlog, we have like 20 stories. We've completed 50 of them so far, so that means we must be like a quarter of the way. But everyone knows that as you go through the Agile process, you'll create more stories. You'll change things. You'll get rid of them. So those 200 initial stories might change to now maybe only 150, 50 of them avoid, or now 500 because you realize you've opened a bunch of new things. And so for them, it's a very hard thing to break away from something that it seems so safe, like numbers, and instead try to let go of that and focus on something that may not be so tangible and a little bit more abstract, like user journeys, and seeing how do you get to that endpoint that you've been suggesting. So I'm just curious in terms of like how, if you have any advice on how to break when you encounter, like I have certain things that I've done, but I would love to hear your ideas in terms of how to make sure that when people are faced with those kinds of problems, how do you change the conversation so that your clients don't feel so scared?
So one thing you may want to try is to include the person or persons that want these charts and graphs to see your progress. Include them earlier in the stages, more often in the stages, and have little wins so they can see the progress. Once they see little wins, and then another little win, and then how it's progressing, then they gain more confidence in the opportunity that you're working on. One thing that we do the journey map, so it shows them where they are today, where they're going to be tomorrow. But we also will include another set that will show today is the 7th, Jan 7th, we're going to be here, Feb 7, we're going to be here. So it shows a progress chart as well, if they think more in that fashion. So they can see the creative part, but they can also see, hey, you're making some progress.
So like
milestones. And milestones coupled with wins. small wins, so they can see progress.
Fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with metrics as long as maybe you change the metrics. Maybe you focus on the right metrics. Maybe you need to measure engagement or something that is not how many agile stories. And I have nothing against agile. I mean, I'm a believer, Scrum Master and all the rest of it. But you measure something that is fundamental. And the other thing to remember here, you have to celebrate success because nothing breeds success like success. So when you have something, when you have a happy client, you start from that benchmark and then you change the benchmark to be more meaningful. That makes sense, that maybe it's improving the user experience, the citizen experience. Maybe it's something different. But again, I will not stand here and say that metrics are bad. Metrics are actually wonderful if they're meaningful. And
yeah, I mean, this is a tough one. This is something that I think everyone can relate to one way or another. You've got a linear client who really wants to see progress in a very typical way, who is like risk averse, who doesn't want to make decisions unless they have something that is very clear, that limits their personal liability to it. And I think that it's, if you're dealing with people in the middle of an organization, it's always a challenge, and getting the right fundamentals underneath things so that things can move forward is tough. I hate to say it, some of it's the psychology. I mean, you got to be really, really confident. You gotta sort of really own things and be, and go in with, with some, really sort of real clarity around where it's going. Then the other thing is I think, like Vera's saying, like with Fannie Mae, we had this one, we're dealing with the executives at Fannie Mae. So it wasn't so bad, but they were still like, we need to make sure that we're making the right decision. And so is this the right decision? Is this the wrong decision? Which decision do you like? And we had to get everything subjective just off the table. And we were really talking about characteristics that we want to communicate. And so we gave them a few points where we did some testing, and it was really just like, we need to just get them off the trail. So we're going to test here and we're going to test there. Even though where we're going is like the unknown, yeah, the testing is going to it'll give us something. It'll give us something to hold on to, so that they have the confidence that there's been a process that has been scientific, and that some of it is scientific, but not really objectifying it around certain characteristics that we need to communicate, and that the certain outcomes that we need to get, and then sort of A/B testing things and doing it as little of it as we could to satisfy that need to say that it's been done, and they can sort of check that box, feel confident about it, and then we move forward in a way that they feel has been sort of socialized.
I saw another question over there. Yeah.
This kind of goes along with her question, actually, and same thing but it's more related to sales and
sales.
And really, and sales, and you mentioned like timeline benchmarking and things, and but when it comes down to the core of it, when you get a project, I mean, how do you build something that is more ephemeral, like this type of thing? I mean, any sort of process like this could be built in any type of way, and any process could be built in any type of way, but I'm just wondering if there's any strategy that you have that works one way better than another, like bill flat rate by an hour? Is it like per person? Is it like by project? Is it, I don't know. How do you sell it? How do you sell something that is like something that is a design thinking process, and also have a timeline, benchmarks, things that are set in stone, that may have open solutions?
Okay, so we do not necessarily sell design thinking per se. It's more part of the process. Let's say we're solving a problem, and part of this extended process of what we're solving, or we're delivering let's say we're doing a redesign or a portal enhancement or new product or experience. So design thinking is part of the overall improving the experience. And I'm not sure if that's the same.
And I'll say, like, from our perspective, so it's really hard to do it, like, whether you're talking about design thinking, agile, any like sort of philosophies of this of an evolving process. And for us, you know, it's typically ends up being very hybridized, where much, you know, there are, you know, a lot of our work is firm fixed price, but we're finding now that the more we do have one client who is fully agile, design thinking, everything, and it's got to be time and materials for them. And we have some retainer clients where we're working against retainer, but you can't fully embrace the process and the chaos and everything else, and capture that in a way from a business perspective with firm fixed. You just can't do it, but you can. There are aspects of it that you can use without, you know, putting yourself at risk of blowing out the scope on your projects and everything else. So it's, I mean, I think that the philosophy is, and also the clients too, you really get the clients bought into the philosophy, because it's a two-way street. But yeah, it's really hard to do it unless you can get someone to buy into time and materials. Hard to do that, or getting retainers.
I mean, do you ever put the company on the line for the work that you do as part of the, you know, you know, if the product gets improved by this much, then you get part of the, you know,
equity kind of thing.
Yeah, that type of,
we don't do any equity.
No.
It's too complicated for us to do that. But there are companies who do that.
yeah.
That might be another session for another time, Jim. You might want to do something like that, to talk more about the whole, how it works. Yeah, the business of UX. But it's a great question.
2017.
Yeah. So let's see. Do we have some more questions? Yeah, go ahead. You mean how I design thinking?
So I'm a big fan of Agile. So I intentionally reduce the amount of resources that I have so that I'm forced to improvise. So it's basically the theory of constraints. So as a result, then basically I have to improvise.
Absolutely. Let me start this one. So with Thanksgiving, what we do, we'd use sticky notes, okay? And we have tasks. Every task is broken down, color-coded, and then it gets posted on the refrigerator. And people can take their tasks and they can report back. We actually do a playback. So diverse users, my mom is a wonderful cook. I can't cook to save my life. So we have diverse users on the team, and then we do a playback, everybody gets back together. I do design thinking in my life a little bit too much. So maybe you don't want to hear all my examples.
So I guess for me, like I actually don't make the distinction between my work, my life, everything else, and maybe because this is, you know, my company. So I really feel like it's all very much connected. I mean, many examples, but it's really not like I take this home and I do this. I just feel like it's all interwoven.
Joe or Steve?
Well, I have two little daughters, and the user experience always goes to them and not to the parents. So that's how that works.
And actually, I have to mention one more thing, which I should probably show a picture of this. You know, people decorate pumpkins. So Steve knows what my pumpkin looked like. It won most original pumpkin in the competition. But anyone from the audience, what do you think my pumpkin was decorated as? What? Design thinking thing. Design thinking thing.
That's a good answer, man. That was
It was actually an empathy map, and it was really funny because somebody I've been working for a while says, "Oh, I've been to a session on this, but after I saw your pumpkin," and it had like what the person says, thinks, feels, and does, and actually had a person with eyes, with doll eyes, and it had little quotes like actual writings and everything.
Very, very big pumpkin.
Yeah, very, very. And they said, after we saw your pumpkin, now we get what an empathy map is. So if that's what it takes, if it takes a pumpkin to get people to get the empathy map, that's what we do. And actually another one, Steve and I just did with our colleagues at IBM, we did a design thinking escape room, which was a fascinating way to use all the principles. They were built into the puzzles and the crossword puzzle. And if you don't understand design thinking, you cannot escape from the escape room. But so that's...
I think the things that I really find really meaningful always involve a team. Okay, so I am super lucky that I do sorts of basically design thinking, method testing, and investigation with a team of people, one of whom is here tonight. Cheers, Lael. And we get together and we figure stuff out in our own lives, in projects we take on, in all different ways. We test different methodologies. We see what we like and what we want to keep and what we want to take. So like that's about, again, about me as a practitioner, because I'm kind of obsessed with that. But also it's about me as a person. And you know, like when I was helping a friend figure out what she wanted to do with her career next, and she knew she had to make a change. And so, you know, all of these types of things, yeah, I think you can apply them in many different ways. But the part that I really like about it is the team. And the teams can change, but having those people you can trust and work with and that are different than you and will tell you the truth, that's invaluable. And I think the diversity and the empathy that's at the heart of design thinking is irreplaceable.
Absolutely. Do we have time for one more question?
One last question.
One last question. Oh, over there in the back? Yeah.
Can design thinking be applied to replace, not to replace, but improve the function of the process or the function of the system?
I couldn't hear. Can somebody?
I'm not sure. Is that again?
Improve the
Can the design thinking be applied to improve the function of the system? Not to just replace and wipe out the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
Can we do 1, 2, 3, and all of us say yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
It can be used to enhance.
Absolutely. Okay, that was a quick yes. Heather, do you have another question? Or?
I guess, is there one example for each of you guys in which you felt like your client was absolutely wowed by your design thinking?
Oh, it happens every day on each project. So
That really stuck out.
Wow. Yeah, I had somebody cry because and it was a returning citizen, and we being not me, but the awesome volunteers of Open IDEO DC really captured her story and reflected that back to her in a way that she did not believe people that came from such different circumstances than she did could understand. And she cried. I mean, it was really powerful. And yeah, you know that when you get something like that back, you're doing something right.
Oh, I think on that inspirational thing. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll build on that because it is something I tell our teams too. Is like show them a picture of themselves they've never seen but always felt, and that you know one of you know working with I was working with Jamaica, the country, and I was supporting a PR firm, and they asked me to help them develop a pitch. And one of the things that I said to the team, like they started doing it and they were showing some very typical tourism type positioning and imagery. And I said, let's take every last bit of this out. Let's not have anyone in bikinis. Let's not have any of the typical symbolism. Let's make this all about empowering from a cultural perspective. And so our pitch, which was for travel and tourism, for managing all the PR for travel and tourism for the country. And so we did a pitch, we did it in Kingston, and the owners of Sandals Resorts were there. And they came up afterward and said, that was really, really powerful. And then we got a Sandals account out of it. But it was because we really thought, and it's really the empathy of your audience. Is like, what do they, it's like, we can show them what we think. Oh, this is what tourism is, but that's not what tourism is. It's something very completely different. And so it's thinking about the problem from a completely different perspective. And that you get results when you do that.
So we have a lot of happy customers. which is good. But we're not going after like the wow, where customers, whoa, you really had a great thing here. We're going for the, oh, of course, that's the answer. You know, a logical solution. So we're going for the of course more than the wow. That's mine.
Okay, thank you all.
So big hand. Thank you so much, guys. That's where the video.
Oh, so we can start dancing? Can I start dancing?
Oh, you should. First of all, I want to say a big thank you. IBM Interactive Experience participated